Well, hello and welcome to the fourth event at AMC Gaming Series. My name is Nikolai Lvov, and today we have a very special subject for video games and video game development, something that is really, really important for myself and something that I wish to share for a really long time. It's about world building and creating worlds through art and through video games. And we'll discuss some tools and rules and most important ways how to convey your story in a video game through some specific number of tools, and how to create a vivid, vibrant world that a player wants to be a part of, that is immersive and reactive, and that will be the subject of our today's conversation. So without further ado, we'll get into the main question: what makes a good video game story? Because if you ask a gamer, in 9 times out of 10, a gamer with some experience with video games will tell you that the best video game he played is the game with the best story, and that the story, the plot, the message of the game is the most important part of it. It's the game that he would love most would be the one that he plays for the plot. That speaks to him, that is relatable to him, that is understandable to this person, whether it's he or she. And if you open some lists of the best games of all time, what are the best games of all time? Usually, these would be games with the best story, with the story that is the most exciting, the most immersive, the most dramatic, and the thing is that unlike any other media, the video games have very special ability, a very special quality. Unlike books, unlike movies, unlike theater even, video games are reactive, immersive, and the experience of one person playing a video game might differ significantly from a experience of another person playing the very same video game. Let's take, I don't know, Witcher 3, for example. Some people would say that in the ending, they got this ending with Ciri, the daughter of the main character, Geralt of Rivia. Some people will say, well, it didn't happen for me. Something else happened with her. So what makes video games as a form of art a very special thing, which is unlike any other media or art in the world, is that the experience of just going through this piece of art will be so drastically different for different people enjoying, not enjoying the particular video game. So it's not enough just to tell a story like in the book, or to show a story like in the movie. You have to make sure that the story is reactive, that it is exciting, that it's game-like. And to do so, various specialties, various specialists from the game development world, including game designers, creative directors, narrative designers, they use some specific tools that are handy, convenient to use, that are universal. So whatever the game you're designing, whatever the world you want to come up with, you will still use the same number of crucial, very important tools. And what is very important when designing a world, or a video game world, or universe, or franchise, or lore, or just a story for a video game, is to make sure that the tools that we will be talking about today are not only handy and universal, but also easy to understand and really exciting to master. So let's get to these tools. And due to the fact that we're discussing games today, let's play a game during this event. So we will be discussing each and every tool from this list in order. And whenever you want to ask about some specific video game that you like, maybe your favorite video game, you just can send the question into the chat, VK or YouTube, and we will see how this particular tool that we will be discussing works in this particular video game that you enjoy or just want to speak about. So let's say we will be talking about world building, and you can ask how world building tools are working for, I don't know, let's say Elden Ring or The Legend of Zelda. So what are these tools, and who is responsible for utilizing them and conveying the story of video games through them and introducing a gamer to the world of the particular video game through these tools? So in 21st century, a person who would do most of that, or at least who would take most of that into consideration, would be a narrative designer. I believe it was first mentioned in the 1997 and 1998 as a position, but in fact, of course, this particular obligations and jobs and tasks were a thing for game development since the very beginning of it, because it's very important whenever you're creating an RPG game or RTS game or first-person shooter game, is to know what world your character lives in. How does it look? How does it smell? What sounds do aliens or monsters or elves or whatever creatures living in this world make? How do they look? What do they wear? What weapons do they use? Or if they don't use any weapons, what do they eat? How do they speak, etc.? The creating of characters is a mission for a narrative designer for any piece of media, actually, including books and films and everything, because characters are so important for being representatives of particular parts of the stories. And philosophy or message of your media or of your world is basically a soul behind everything. A soul of the world, of the story, of the thing you want to convey to your reader, watcher, player. Whenever you create a world, you have something inside of you that you want to share, something that you want to be clear about, some idea, no matter how abstract it is, or sometimes a particular message, maybe political message, maybe social message. Let's say the cartoons by Hayao Miyazaki are really, really ecological in their message. They convey a simple message of let's respect the nature and understand it instead of mutilating it. And apart from some abstract things and idealistic things such as creating worlds, creating characters, and thinking about the philosophy, of course, there are tasks that are more typical for game designers than for narrative designers, but they're still very important for a person who's creating a story in the world, which are core game loop, the progression of the character, both from the side of gameplay and the story, the difficulty of his encounters, because it's a big part of progression, obviously, and then the quests, because quests are like episodes of the game, like chapters of the book, like acts of the play in theater, like episodes of the movie or of the series. Quests are the situations our characters are getting in the world they inhabit, and that's their challenge. That's the moment they prove themselves to be either progressing in the right direction or not being good enough to face the difficulty that they encounter. So, and obviously there's art and sound, something that the art specialists and the sound designers or musicians usually deal with, but it's still very important for any creator of any video game, because when one is creating character philosophy in the world, it's very important for him to understand how the world looks like and how it sounds, and if everything in the art representation is similar to the world that the narrative designer or the screenwriter, or in some cases game designer, has come up with. So let's take every tool in a closer look on it, and let's see if the first example would fit the description. In my opinion, it should. And once again, if you want to discuss some of your favorite video games, you can ask, for example, about world building in it or progression, etc., and we'll get to it and we will discuss it together I will try to offer my personal assessment and my attitude towards this particular video game and how these particular tools work in it. So world building, what is the world? World is something much more than just a number of rules or factions that a player can see in the video game. World is, in many cases, something really, really general, something really, really universal. So, for example, the world includes in itself the history of this world, the cultures of this world, the politics of this world, the design, art, sound. Everything is in this word world. But when somebody comes up with creating a particular experience, particular story, he starts with something really general, something like, I want to do a fantasy game, and I want it to be dark and gritty. I want it to be terrifying in some points of it, and I want it to do with lots of various factions. And that brings you to creating something like The Witcher, for example. One of the finest examples of the video game worlds that work, that are immersive enough for a player to feel like home whenever he visits this world, or at least to understand its rules right away, or almost right away, is of course the world of Fallout. And it's no mistake that I'm using the really outdated old picture from the first Fallout game of 1997 now, because many of the rules of how the worlds in video games and how the narrative of video games is created are even used by us to this very day, because of the creators of Fallout series, because of Tim Kaine, Leonard Boyarsky, Brian Fargo, Chris Avallone, people who were working in the Obsidian Entertainment for years before creating Fallout series. But that, I guess, was their masterpiece. And it's so important for the history of video games and for the history of any franchise, even TV franchise or film franchise in the 21st century, because it laid a foundation for those rules, how the world, a new world, a fresh IP should operate, should work to be transparent for a player, to be self-explanatory, and at the same time intriguing enough for a player to be willing to travel through it, to know more about it. So, and due to how important Fallout is to the history of game development, the rules and the points on this slide are coming directly from the writings and essays and video essays of Tim Kaine, of one of the creators of Fallout, who was one of the narrative designers for this game, who conceived this world and wrote so much wonderful lore and stories inside it, and who was the creator of this universe. So according to Tim Kaine, what we should always start with when we are coming up with world building is the setting. We touched it briefly, whether the setting is fantasy with knights, elves, and dwarves, or it's sci-fi with aliens and space wizards, or it's I don't know, let's say some mix of sci-fi and fantasy, a medieval sci-fi world such as Warhammer 40,000. A very important thing is to understand what the setting is. How does it work? What people live inside that world? How do they communicate with each other? And what's even more important, what is important to them? So whenever we create a world, we need to understand one simple thing. What is the motivator for any person in this imaginative world to wake up in the morning? What does he do? What adventures can he be? This person be part of? Where would this person travel? What fort this person would leave and die and fight, or I don't know, achieve something that is important to him? And if this is done right, that creates some sort of reactivity for the player experiencing this world. Because if the world is settled with the living creatures, that have their own priorities, something that is important to them, they would react to the player's actions. They wouldn't just look at him as typical NPCs, ignoring his actions. So let's say in Fallout, when you're traveling from world to world, from city to city, you enter the city gates and you face the bunch of villagers who live there, and they are not really predisposed to trust you right away, because they live in a nuclear wasteland after the nuclear end of the world, after the apocalypse has happened in the world of Fallout due to the nuclear war in the 21st century. And the cities that are surrounded with fences and walls are hiding, people in the cities are hiding from the mutants, raiders, bandits, and various terrible ecological and climate effects that are a big part of Fallout universe. And whenever some alien comes into their city and says, hello, I want to, I don't know, offer you help, they would never trust the player initially with giving him important tasks, allowing him to some secrets of theirs, because due to the setting, the reactivity of the people who inhabit this world is very characteristic for the lore and the setting and for just the way how this world operates. So the lore is very important, of course, because it explains some of the motifs and some of the character qualities for the world. But it's very important at the same time not to overwhelm a player with lore, not to do too much of an emphasis on it, because what makes the world intriguing and interesting is that he looks for lore. He doesn't get all the lore and information of what happened 10 years ago, what happened 15 years ago, what happened 4 billion years ago. It's not that important for a player initially. He just needs to feel the presence of the lore, that something is there deeper on other layers of the story. But instead of just showing the lore, it's very important to represented through characters and factions that live in the world. So let's say factions is one of the biggest achievements in game design of Obsidian Entertainment, and further on in other studios that the creators from Obsidian were working at, the Black Isle, the Interplay, of course, the Troika games, etc. So factions represent the world, and they create this sort of feeling that is really important for any person who is new to this universe or world, of belonging, of being part of this world. So let's say, and it doesn't really work only for video games, it works both for video games, for movies, for TV series, whatever the world you want to create. It's very important to have factions there. Have you ever seen memes saying, forget about astrology, what does your favorite, I don't know, college in Harry Potter say about you? Or a clan or family from Game of Thrones series or the books. It's very important to find a reliable source of immersion into the world when you're playing a game or watching a movie, because it's in many ways it's your anchor. It's the medium between the player, the watcher, the reader, and the world he wants to be part of or he wants to know more about. So whenever any narrative designer or screenwriter or game designer is creating a new world, it's pivotal for him. It's very important for him to come up with characters that will convey the history, the lore of the world through their own personal stories, to which a player or any other person, watcher, reader, can rely and can understand. A fine example of that would be Baldur's Gate 3, a recent major success in the world of CRPGs, a game from Belgian studio Larian, which introduces players to a set of characters, each and every one of whom is sharing the same problems as the main character, as the protagonist, the person that the player is playing as. And at the same time, having a set of their own big issues, problems, inner conflicts, moral grounds and choices. In fact, the world building is a layer that most players do not see on the daily basis, but they see it through the prism of the characters they encounter, they become friends with, they share some stories. And that's why it's so important to create a set of sympathetic characters with their own moral grounds, with their own personal choices that would be relatable in their story and will add some nuances and additional narratives to the main story of the game. So they would speak as additional voices, making story more rich, more relatable, and more nuanced. And if to speak about Baldur's Gate 3, of course, it's very important to mention here how sympathetic the characters in this game are, how amiable they are, how attractive they are in many cases for many players. And the big stake of the creators of Baldur's Gate 3 was making them, as is called in the game development and gaming world, romanceable. So that every and each of them can not only become a friend of the main character, of the player, they can also become a romantic interest for him and develop a special type of relationship, a romantic type of relationship with the player, and thus immerse him even deeper in this world. Because to any person in this world, friendship and romantic relationships and family relationships are some very, very self-explanatory, really understandable things. And adding this touch to creating your characters is very important, just due to the fact that it instantly makes them living, breathing human beings, no matter if they're Githyanki like Lazelle, or vampires like Astarion, or tieflings like Carla. It's just at the same time, a player will feel that he's not speaking to a bunch of pixels and programming code and script hidden behind the 3D models. It will create an immersion and the illusion that there's a living creature in front of you, which is very important because apart from the world, the story, and the characters to represent this world and the story, there's another layer in every story, no matter if it's simple or complicated, no matter if it's some postmodern masterpiece with 1,000 homages and references and links and footnotes and thousands and thousands of papers of text, or if it's a simple game like platformer or side scroller even, there is still some message between the lines. Before we get to examples on the screen, let's say Sonic, the series about Blue Hedgehog running in the industrial zones of dystopic future, fighting with robotic turtles and things like that. There is still a message in Sonic. It's still a game with some sort of philosophy behind it, very typical for Japanese creators. Sonic is a game about ecology, about saving animals, about saving climate, about limiting the industrial involvement into the climate, because basically at the end of each level of Sonic, this simple cartoonish game, you save animals from evil Dr. Robotnik and set them free from his prison. So even simple games like Sonic, they have a message. And obviously, if games like that have a message, what can we say about games like Planescape Torment and Disco Elysium, which are basically not only games with rich lore and wonderful story, one of the best written dialogues in the history of most art forms, actually. It's also sometimes it's almost like a manifesto of personal beliefs and ideas of the creators. So, for example, Planescape Torment is maybe a masterpiece of the wonderful narrative designer and screenwriter and writer Chris Avellone, an American narrative designer and creative director who worked in Black Isle and Obsidian and in many, many other studios, which starts and ends with the philosophical question, what can change a nature of a man? And the character that you're supposed to be playing as, the main character of this game, is an immortal being that lived through thousands of human lifetimes, being, in some of them, being a good person, in some of them being a terrible person, in some of them making friends, in some of them making enemies. And through exploring the world of Planescape Torment, this absurd, abstract, really surrealistic world, he is shaping his new life, and he is trying to solve the main question, who is he and what can change his nature, given the fact that he has thousands of natures, thousands of characters, due to how many lifetimes he lived through. Another wonderful example, not from the United States, but from the country of Estonia, is Disco Elysium, a quite more recent game that was in many ways inspired by Planescape Torment. And this game is a very special type of intimate sort of autobiography in some ways, and at the same time it's a political manifesto of the creators of this game. At the same time is the postmodern homage to all the things that inspired the creators of Disco Elysium from Zaum Studio, such as noir detectives from the United States, such as the Eastern European philosophical approach with elements of magic realism, to developing a story. At the same time, it's the evaluation and meditation on the 20th century history of Estonia as being part of the Soviet Union and making its own steps away at some point from this part of the history. At the same time, it's a vivid, beautiful world with references to Orthodox Christian art, brutalist, avant-garde art of 20th century, referencing literature from the United States, such as Ken Melville, and from Soviet Union, such as Strugatsky brothers. So it is all conveyed through the world of Disco Elysium, through the story of this world, through the drastic catastrophes that this world is experiencing, through the homages hidden between the lines. And it's, in all honesty, one of the finest examples of art ever created in 21st century, which is certainly a thing to pay attention to and at least try and see how unique and how individual and how original a world can be in our days, when everybody is saying that you cannot come up with something fresh and new. Well, apparently, if your game has a soul behind it, if the game has a message to convey to players, it still can be original, it still can be fresh and beautiful, and in many ways life-changing. But of course, the video games and the worlds of the video games are not just abstract and general things such as factions, characters, philosophy, messages. Apart from all of that, when somebody is creating a video game and wants to create a world for a video game, it's crucial to understand how this video game will be being played, how it will work, and what the core game loop will be like. So obviously, it's not a matter of concern for a writer, for example, because the writer is a person who's just creating dialogues, adding some touches here and there. He's responsible for the literature foundation of the video game message and text. But at the same time, the narrative designer or a game designer, after coming up with setting and some stories inside this setting, just to make sure that it works, should really invest its time and attention to the core game loop. Because Um, whenever the game is being in production, the first and most important question is what the player in the game will be doing most. What will be the most frequent and repeating actions in gameplay, and that will lead the creators to deciding which genre they want to make their game in. So let's say the core game loop of Mario games is you start on one side of the screen and you run through the two-dimensional world, jumping on the turtles and getting bonuses. And at the end of the game level, you will jump on the flagpole. You will get the message that the level is complete, and you will see the amount of scores you got for completing this level. It's simple and understandable. Then, for example, for a game like Witcher, what will be a game loop in Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt? Well, you start the game from your recent save. You go for some of your quests, exploring the open world on your way to the quest tracking indicator. You go through this quest, you search for something, exploring the world further on, you fight somebody during your questing, then you get to some dialogue, which will offer you, most likely will offer you a moral choice of what to do and what not to do, and what to choose and whose side to be on, and that will be your game loop in The Witcher. So basically, when you are creating a world, and you want this world to be simple and fairy tale like, and I don't know, kind and easy, without any horror elements or something like that, it would not be wise for you to include elements of game loop such as I don't know, a very complicated nuanced system of combat, or let's say some progression of skills that allow you to do something evil and disturbing. It shall not be a part of your game loop, because you know that that you want to tell a story of the world that is mostly about fairy tales dancing on the beautiful hills and valleys, and it's about finding treasures and making friends with squirrels and things like that. So with this number of artistic choices that you have already done by the point you are choosing the choices for a game loop, it is very important to understand what your world is about, what your setting is about, what characters live in there, because there's no use into adding some elements of game loop that will not work inside the world you have created. And that brings you to choosing the genre. Once again, the game about fairy tales and ponies is certainly not a good example of survival genre or horror genre, unless you want to somehow change your attitude or player's attitude to this genre. Something that would be more logical to choose is something like a farming simulator, or I don't know, just free roaming open world with the nice music and meditative game design. So your game loop will be go from one hill to another, speak with one fairy, and then go to another fairy, and make a tea party with ponies, etc. So your genre would be predestined by your previous choices, and that's how you choose the gameplay focus. So let's speak about example of far darker video game than the one that I just came up with. It's one of the best Russian video games of the previous decade, at the very least. It's called Pathologic 2, or Morotopia, with the narrative designer being Alfina Alexandra Goveska. And this is a game that has a very dark, a very disturbing world, or the biggest problem in which, the biggest tragedy in which, is the coming plague that kills people, that disturbs their lives, that cleanses the cities, and nobody can escape from that. And the big part of the message and philosophy of this game is set in the very beginning of the game, just as a title writing on your screen, saying that your body will betray you. Do not rely on your body. Rely on your will, on your courage to get through the challenges of this terrifying world of Pathologic 2. And this message and this world and the characters that live in this world, they inspire the core game loop, which is survival, which is making sure that you can last through the day with having enough food to eat, with having enough warmth, enough medicine, making sure that your immunity is strong enough to withhold the interactions with people who are already sick with the plague that has come into the town. And the main character is the doctor who's trying to save the town in Pathologic 2. So the genre is an immersive sort of role-playing survival game with elements of horror. And that all comes from the world. If the world was different, there would have been no use in creating a survival immersive game where the core game loop is changing the face mask you're wearing to avoid getting sick. The core game loop being eating enough to last through the end of the day, finding a place to stay. If this game was about omnipotent hero with magic sword, the creators of Pathologic would not need to use any mechanics, any elements of gameplay, such as the ones in Pathologic 2. So that's why the progression is very important, even for a person who has nothing to do with coding the game, with creating specific perks or skills, etc. Whenever you are creating a video game, it's very important to understand how the character will progress through it, how the player will progress to it. A fine example to that would be Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, another quite recent game, which shares some survival elements and immersive elements with the games we've previously mentioned. At the same time, it makes it far more rewarding, far less terrifying, far less mandatory. In the world of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, the progression of the main character, Henry from Scalas, is the progression of the person who had recently lost everything that he had, including his physical strength due to the trauma, and now he's trying to return his abilities and forces and basically do a comeback to this world of 15th century Bohemia. And even though the narrative designers of many games, it's not necessarily that they worked on creating stats and numbers and what that or this example of ammunition does. It's still really important for any creator to understand not only the world the character lives in, but the skills that the character can utilize to interact with this world, because it's very important. So the world would be reactive to the character and thus to the player, that the perks, stats, skills, ammunition, attire, everything like that is clear and understandable for the writer, for the creator himself or herself. So let's take a closer look to the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's the world of a very realistic representation of 15th century Czech Republic or Bohemia, and the skills that the main character and the player use are typical for the world of that particular historical period. So it's important to know how to ride a horse. It's important to know how to distinguish healthy herbs from poisonous to create some alchemical decoctions and potions and poisons, etc. It's important to know how to ride a horse, how to communicate with hounds and dogs. It's important to know how to hunt, how to survive in the forest. So that's the set of tools that the character has to interact with the world you have created. And so if this world is supposed to be interactive, it's very important for the creator himself to think about the progression of the character, because the progression in terms of numbers and skills and various game mechanics is also a reflection of the progression of the story. So Henry starts as a person who has already almost reached the top that is achievable to his social strata in the world of medieval Bohemia. And then he gets wounded and he loses everything. And alongside with his physical abilities and skills and mechanics that he can use in the very beginning of the game, he loses his social status, he loses all of his money, and he basically loses his name. And he has to regain it altogether once again. And by creating an easy to learn, interesting to master system of perks and skills and mechanics for your protagonist, when you're creating a world, you are at the same time making a very comfortable and helpful in your task tool to enhance the story, to make it more vibrant, to make it more explanatory and reliable to the player. And another thing to worry about is the difficulty and well, what other example can be used here but Elden Ring by From Software, released in 2022 by the creator, game designer, and narrative designer Hidetaka Miyazaki. So it's still a big part of the world you're creating. How difficult it is to roam through it, how difficult it is to explore it, how exciting it is, and how challenging it is for the character, for the player to participate in the adventures of this world. So basically, it's the same thing. If you want to make a game about some terrifying, dark, and disturbing world, it's better to make it difficult, because if everything will be easy peasy for a player, there will be a dissonance between the story written in dialogues and texts and lore and the actual gameplay. If the gameplay is easy, exciting, rewarding, and there's no issues, no troubles, no obstacles on your path, well, then the world doesn't feel that dark and terrifying altogether, all suddenly. So it's very important to take it into the consideration, even though narrative designer is rarely a person to program the difficulty or to actually decide what amount of health points, hit points, armor points, etc. will that or this enemy have. When he is creating a character, an enemy or an antagonist, it's very important for him to understand how challenging it will be for a player to have a face-off with this character. So let's say Melania here on the screen is the reason a lot of people have broken their game pads or PCs out of rage, out of 200 attempts to get her to fight with her. And still she remains one of the most difficult and challenging bosses in the history of video games. And it's very important because in the history of the world of Elden Ring, she's one of the most able, most agile, and most significant warriors to ever live. So a fight with a person like that should not be easy. It should be terrifyingly hard. And with everything of that in consideration, let's get to the point of creating quest lines, and let's compare two previous examples of video games in terms how questing works in these games, and how it helps to enhance the world of these video games and how it helps to convey the message of these video games. And we'll start with something more understandable, such as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. So there is certainly a formula of how the quests are done or created for various video games by narrative designers and screenwriters and writers. Due to what we've discussed about Kingdom Come Deliverance, we already know what kind of character Henry is. He has a redemption arc, and he is the person that really needs, because he is forced to become a part of life in 15th century Bohemia. It is his choice, or a player's choice, how to interact with this world. You can be a thief, stealing things that you need for progressing through the quests and the history under the cover of the night. You can be a smooth talker, a person who convinces everybody to do as he says, or lies to everybody to make them do as he says. You can be a rapscallion or some sort of scavenger, or an outlaw who is just generally really scary, and he can use the intimidation perks to get through the quests. But the bottom part is, due to the way how you choose to interact with the world of Kingdom Come Deliverance, you are shaping your gameplay approach, and you are shaping the most expected results of each particular quest or episode of the story. And due to the fact that the world of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is supposed to be really immersive and introducing players to the history of Czech Republic of 15th century, the quests here are done in such a way that is far more reminiscent of real life, not of the typical video game quest. So let's say Henry needs to get a loot for a bunch of lazy-bones poets drinking in the tavern, refusing to pay their debts. In many video games, that would be a simple task. Go and find the loot, steal it from the place the loot is hanging on the wall, bring it to these two lazybones, and get reward, let's say 50 golden coins, and that would be it. But due to the fact that the world of Kingdom Come Deliverance relies on some specific rules of the setting, and its characters represent these rules and the message of this game, when Henry gets the loot, he becomes wanted in the city where he steals the loot from. He needs to make his escape from the city. He gets to these two lazybone poets in the other city where they're still drinking, gives them the loot, and instead of the reward, they accidentally break it in front of Henry. And instead of giving some reward or level up or a new perk or something like that, they continue bothering the player and Henry with further demands and questions, and asking to get new strings for the loot. And that sets Henry on another journey and leads him to another place where he needs to interact with other people to get what he needs, and at the same time solving their problems and their issues. So a quite opposite example of quest design would be, of course, games by From Software and Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and of course Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, there's no general mission from the game developer side and point of view to introduce you to vivid and feeling as if they're alive characters. The mission is to actually make you feel confused, make you feel lost, frightened, asking questions that have no answers, actually. And that's why the characters in the worlds of Hidetaka Miyazaki speak with such a cryptic, mystical attitude that is very difficult to understand them. And at the same time, it serves a very important gameplay purpose, because everybody knows how difficult the games by From Software are. And the cryptic design of quests kind of forces a player to ask for help from the community, to go to Reddit or Steam comments or to his own friends and ask them, Yeah, look, I was speaking with White Mask Vary, and White Mask Vary told me to look for a piece of cloth and make a sacrifice to the Moog, the Omen of Darkness. But I can't say that I really understand what that means. And his friend or a person on Reddit or whomever would say, I didn't understand that either. But accidentally, I was traveling through this region and I found the place where you can put this piece of cloth in, painted with blood, and thus that will be a sacrifice worthy of the one that was asked from you from the very beginning. So the thing is here that it's not about being clear in case with Elden Ring. It's about being as obscure as possible, and that's a quest design that really fits the general narrative and philosophy of Hidetaka Miyazaki games. Even though many people dislike it and it's totally understandable, it's still part of the very well thought through system of creating world, creating setting, creating characters, creating philosophy, coming up with gameplay loop. Even if you don't like it, it still works. So it's unorthodox, but in many ways, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 quest design is unorthodox too. And let's briefly, before finishing today's conversation and starting questions and answers, get to the art and sound aspects of narrative design. Even though, obviously, a narrative designer is not painting anything, he's not creating any pieces of art, and he certainly doesn't write music. In most of cases, sometimes there are exclusions from this rule. It's important for a creator of the world to have to understand some indicators, some aspects of art and visual elements of the storytelling, just to make sure that the other people who are working on the game and are trying to enhance the world of this game understand the general message. So it's important to control that, to be part of that. There are many cases when narrative designers are present during the voiceover recordings, so they know that the characters that they came up with are being portrayed by the actors properly. And generally, it's just important to have some directions for the professionals, from starting with musicians and with artists. When you're creating the world, you should know how this world looks like. Even though you can't portray it yourself, you have to be able to explain it to the artist or the sound producer, sound designer, or a musician, just to make sure that you're being properly understood. So let's say it's not an example from video games, but while creating Star Wars, George Lucas, not being a musician of any sort, he was speaking with John Williams, the composer for the movies, and was trying to explain to him how it is, how the movie is supposed to sound. And he said that he wants something really operatic, resembling of 19th century opera, something Wagnerian, like Wagner's music, with elements of heroic, romantic approach to the story. And that was enough. Explaining, for example, how Yoda, the Master Yoda from Empire Strikes Back, is supposed to act and look, inspired John Williams to use the melody with white keys only, white keys on piano. So no other sorts of black keys on the piano, using the most simple, most clear melody in C major. And John Williams explained that by saying, after speaking about Master Yoda, I realized that he's a wise character, and I thought that the wisdom is very innocent in its nature. So, and what can be more innocent than just using only white keys and C major key? So there we have it. That's the most important tools of interacting with the world that you came up with, of creating this world, inhabiting it with characters, adding the soul to this world by philosophy and what is important to you. What do you want to say? And if this world is a video game, it's very important to think about things like core game loop and progression and difficulty of the encounters when you're creating quests and trying to prove if the character and the player is worthy of progressing the game further on and getting to the end of this world while enjoying the art and sound that you inspired with the beautiful world of yours. So let's get to the questions. I'll just have a sip of coffee before that. Okay, so question 1: what makes a game world feel truly alive and immersive to you? In my case, we've touched the general rules before, so if I have to share my personal opinion about that, it's a little bit weird, but at the same time, it's true. I just really love useless activities in video games. I love cooking in The Legend of Zelda. I love blacksmithing in Skyrim. I really liked some survival elements of New Vegas in Fallout. And currently playing Kingdom Come Deliverance. I'm just spending hours creating potions and various things. I guess it's, it's similar to the experience in the real world. You don't actually feel really observing and being part of the world until the moment you sit still, look around on the beautiful green grass or beautiful blue sky or mountains or sea or something like that, and you breathe in, and you generally just look. And at this point, you feel as a part of this world here in our quote unquote real world. So whenever I have an ability to do the same thing in video game, that makes me feel as part of it, and the world really alive and immersive, because I'm looking at the wonderful green valleys of Hyrule and I'm thinking, oh my God, I would like to be a part of that, definitely. How does visual design, music, and sound contribute to world building alongside narrative elements? So the art part of that, and design part of that, and musical part of that is definitely really, really important for the immersion and being part of the world you're experiencing. So let's say when you create a world and you choose a setting, let's say it's steampunk, let's say it's 19th century inspired world of pirates living in a semi steampunk world. It's very important for the narrative designer or game designer to go and speak with the artist and tell him, well, you know what we have here in my video game or board game, it doesn't matter, is that these guys use these sorts of weapons, and they wear this type of attire or costumes. And I can draw myself, but I can tell you which artists are similar to the thing I have in my mind's eye. Let's say I'm really inspired with Toulouse-Lautrec or Felicien Rops or something like that, and I really want my game to be resembling of the attires and costumes of these artists. So it's very important to have references, and it's very important to have some sort of ability to say, well, I can do world building, I can do dialogues. I certainly cannot paint that and draw that. So I better find a person who is a professional in this department and will ask him and will explain to him how to do that. But obviously, the sound design, the art design, the visualization of your ideas is crucial, because without that, it's just an imagination, it's just a fantasy of yours. Do you see any trends in what kinds of stories or settings resonate most with today's players? I can see that the trend is changing rapidly right now. I can see that many cliches of previous years are being ridiculed, changed, sometimes to the greater extent that it deserves to be changed, I guess. But at the same time, it's very natural. I think that the most important and worrisome part of trend changing in the world of video games nowadays is that due to commercialization and making everything profitable, we're forgetting how new, how fresh, how unique the video game art form is. And we tend to use the prepared in advance formulas of creating gameplay, game loop, stories, and progression, instead of trying something new, something beautiful, something interesting. If you pay attention to what games are the most successful and best evaluated and have the highest ratings and appraisals in the past couple of years, most of these games will be really unique. They will not be they will not be clones of more successful previous games. So let's say Clair Obscur is one of the most important achievements for the game development industry of this year. And that's because it's really, really unique and wholesome and original. How can you manage and organize a team of developers in a way that properly weaves everything into an output? I saw some studios make a design of an office any other way. Well, let's say it's mostly about networking. It's mostly about finding people who have the same set of interests and video game references as you do. It's about understanding what's your specialty is. What are you good at? Let's say Tim Kane from Fallout. He has a wonderful video about that. I really recommend his YouTube channel. He says that he can do a good piece of dialogue, and he can do a good one-paragraph description of a character, which gets into your mind's eye, and you remember it, and you have it, and you feel immersed and excited about this character. But he cannot write a long prose. He cannot write a story, a novel, nothing like that. He says that he's really bad at that. And he's a professional who created the Fallout world and in a big part contributed to the world of Pillars of Eternity and Tyranny, etc. So it's very important to understand what you're good at and find people who are good at something you are bad at, if it makes sense. So, for example, when I'm working on something of my own, I know that there's zero chance I can draw it properly. There's zero chance I can come up with even one or two straight lines on a piece of paper. So if I want to produce something of my own, I'd contact the artist, and I'll try to look if the artists have the same set of values and abilities, well, not abilities, and references and inspirations and aspirations as I do. And if we can work together, I think what's beautiful about the world of video games and movies, unlike the world of poetry, literature, and traditional art, is that there's no one author, one creator to any video game. There's 10 people, 100 people, sometimes 500 people who created this game. They all are working in synthesis on creating something beautiful, something inspiring, a world truly immersive, truly exciting, truly worthy of being a part of. So if there are no other questions, I guess that's it for today. And thank you all so very much for being a part of this series, asking questions, joining these streams. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And good evening to you.